A lot of people don't look at it in that way. They just see it as, oh, it adds value to these neglected properties. But, it can also add value to the neighborhood and, just the whole area overall. So who's involved when it comes to flipping? Now, it's more than, just the flipper, which is typically like the investor who comes in and buys this property to, do upgrades and renovations to it. But, most of the time, is not just the person who's invested in it. So they will have contractors, suppliers, and agents. Now for the what. So what is flipping? So flipping is done when a buyer, typically an investor, comes in and buy this property. Usually it's distressed or an older property that needs to be fixed, so it's more of a fixer-upper property. They buy it and then they do the upgrades and the renovations to it, and then they sell it. They can sell it. They can rent it out as well, but sometimes they sell it. Welcome to The Real Yasharika, my real side in all things real estate. I'm Yasharika, and today's video is dedicated to Members Monday. So every Monday I come on here and I tell you guys about a different member within the real estate community. And so today we are going to be talking about flippers and flipping of houses. So I will be talking to you guys about the benefits of how that works for buyers and for sellers and for agents as well. I'm going to talk about the process. I'm going to talk about I'm going to give you guys my typical 5 W's and how. So that's who, what, when, where, why, and how. And so I'm also going to, tell you guys the overall benefits, and then I'm going to break it down into each party for buyers, sellers, and agents. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the overall benefits, right? The overall benefits to having these flippers and having the whole flipping process done. Okay. So let's start with that. Revitalizing neighborhoods is one of the benefits right there. It kind of just takes these neighborhoods that have, older properties and older housings, and they're able to do updates on these properties, and it doesn't just help just the property itself, but it can help neighborhoods overall. A lot of people don't look at it in that way. They just see it as, oh, it adds value to these neglected properties. But it can also add value to the neighborhood and just the whole area overall. It also can help boost local economies because it's giving different people different tasks and jobs to do, like contractors, suppliers, and agents. And so for the flippers who are actually, buying these properties to do that, they have the opportunity to sell it fully and, do a complete cash out opportunity, or they can rent it out and, have income over time. So it's a good opportunity either way. So those are some of the benefits. Let's get into the 5 W's and how. So that's the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And I'm going to do it in that order. So here we go. So who's involved when it comes to flipping? Now, it's more than, just the flipper, which is typically like the investor who comes in and buys this property to, do upgrades and renovations to it. But, most of the time, is not just the person who's invested in it. So they will have contractors that will be out there and, actually doing the work to fix the property. So contractors do play a role in that, a huge role in that. Those are the main two. You have the investor, and then you have, so that's the person who's buying this property, and the person and the people, the contractors, are coming out there to fix it up. Before the buyer can even, buy it, there has to be, somebody who has ownership of it and some seller willing to sell it. So there you go. You have the seller, and then the buyer is going to buy it, which is typically the investor, and then the contractors are going to come out and, fix it up. And of course, the suppliers, you need the equipment, the right tools and whatnot to upgrade these properties. And then sometimes agents are involved in the buying and the selling process as well. Now for the what. So what is flipping? So flipping is done when a buyer, typically an investor, comes in and buy this property. Usually it's distressed or an older property that needs to be fixed, so it's more of a fixer-upper property. They buy it and then they do the upgrades and the renovations to it, and then they sell it. They can sell it. They can rent it out as well, but sometimes they sell it. Now, if you want to become a flipper, you got to be strategic about this and know when to do that, because you don't want to just be constantly it's not all about buying and selling. You want to sell it for a profit. You want to try to get more than what you spent, of course. And then you have, all of the renovations that you've done. So you want to make up for that as well. So you definitely want to know the numbers. You want to be strategic. And if you don't, you're not really good with that yet, you can work with the agent who works with investors and, get into it that way and learn about, your ROI and return on investments, because you cannot, let's say you finish within a certain time frame. That doesn't always mean that it's the best time to sell it if you're going to sell it, because there are times where, it just depends on where the market is at. And certain times, if you put it out too early or too late, there may be a time where you may not get the amount that you need in order to make an actual profit. So you definitely want to look at the numbers and look at the timing to make sure that you are getting an actual profit and not just trying to do a quick sale, because a quick sale doesn't always mean a profit. So timing is everything on that as well. So make sure that you're educating yourself on that if you are looking to actually flip. So when is this done? Now, this can happen anytime in dated or distressed property enters the market. Any older home, some sellers do sell these properties, as is. And so when you see as is properties, it's a good opportunity for, well, it depends, not always, it depends on what's wrong with it and what all you have to fix and whatnot, but typically it's an opportunity for investors, because most regular buyers, like home buyers who are planning to actually live in the properties, don't go for that unless they want a fixer-upper type of property and they have money saved and they're willing to fix it up themselves. But most regular buyers are looking for move-in ready homes, and so those as-is properties that are being sold are typically going towards investors. Investors usually reach out in those type of situations. So where is this done? Now, that's typically in like older areas, older neighborhoods, places that have foreclosure properties, or a foreclosure market. And then also growing cities. If an area is growing and, some areas don't have a lot of like open space. It may be growing but don't have a lot of open space for like new constructions. So that's the opportunity. Flipping is an opportunity where you can kind of grow an area just off of that, just by upgrading these properties and making it, making it more modern for people. Because again, let's say it has a lot of open space and land. It may not be all for residential. So you have to check with zoning as well in terms of, if it's for residential or is it for more industrial and commercial and things like that. So, even with open land, you may not be able to have that opportunity to add in brand new homes and new construction. So flipping is a good opportunity, using the land in areas that already have properties and are already used, residentially, for residential properties. Go ahead and using those and upgrading it, making it modern and making a profit that way. So why is this done? Why is flipping a thing? So most flippers do it for money. That's the honest truth. A lot of people, do it for a profit. But again, there are benefits to it, as I've mentioned in the beginning of this video. It could bring beauty and, just a nice appeal to neighborhoods, and it raises property values. And, again, this isn't just something that's done to that specific property. It's kind of like the neighborhood as a whole. The more these properties around you grow, the more it could make your own property, if you live around properties that are being upgraded and, just making everything better and cleaner. It just makes it like a nicer neighborhood for people to want to come to and want to move to. So that's a benefit to it. So how is this done? How do flippers do it? What's the process for it? You're going to purchase a property. You're going to, upgrade it, do the renovations for it. Then you could, stage it and put it on the market. And in that process, you are going to resell it. It's a resale. Again, if it's, it's a property that has been purchased. So at that point, when you're doing a flipping, when you're flipping, it's a resale property. It's a property that's been used. People have lived in it before. It's not new construction. So, at that point, it is a resale. So now let's get into the point of views for buyers, sellers, and agents. And again, I'm going to go in that order. So starting with buyers. So buyers, so when a flip takes place and this flipping process takes place, you now gain an opportunity and access to a move-in ready home. And once you gain access to that, this is a good thing, because now you're not limited to having to go find an area that has new construction, and you're not limited to getting an older property where you have to fix a lot of things. So it's kind of, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You kind of get to meet it in the middle, where again, it's not too old, and it's, not too new, because typically new construction is going to cost more because everything is brand new. But most of the time when flipping is done, it's not a whole lot of things that are brand new. Sometimes the structure of the home stays the same. It may still have just 2 or 3 bedrooms or whatnot, but they just kind of updated some of the things, or like the kitchen, they may have updated the appliances and little things like that. Again, now for flippers, if you're looking to buy and you're looking to actually flip, now that's going to depend based on the property that you get. Some properties may need more structural things, so flooring, roofing may need to be redone, and that's going to be more costly than a property that doesn't need all of that. Sometimes, not all the time, but you never know what else could be wrong. It could be electrical problems that you can't really see from the outside. It's probably under these walls and whatnot. So yeah, definitely look into that. But for the buyers who are looking for a move-in ready home, if you're looking to actually move in, and not as an investor, but to actually live in these properties, again, it's a good opportunity to kind of meet in the middle between new construction and a fixer-upper. Again, it can play a factor in areas. So, it may be an area that's older, but you may like that area, but you don't really necessarily want your home to be older. You want some nice modern things, new fancy appliances. They're really going for this gray. I see a lot of different gray vibes, especially in the kitchens, cabinets, gray cabinets, and your stainless steel kitchen appliances. So yeah, a lot of older homes don't have that. So something as simple as that you may find in a home that has been flipped. Again, it is going to be a reduced risk compared to full-on fixer-uppers, where you have to pretty much do everything yourself. Again, these fixer these flipper homes, the homes that have already been flipped, safety wise, all of those things should already be taken care of. It should already be, modern. It may be some minor things you want to change, like maybe the cabinets are gray and you don't want gray, you may want a darker color. So, something like that. Now that's a simple fix, a repaint or whatnot. But, other than that, it shouldn't be nothing major that you have to do in a home that's already, been flipped. Just minor colors that you may want to change within the kitchen, or the color of the bedroom that's painted, simple things like that. But it shouldn't be anything major like having to redo the flooring or redo the roof, anything related to structure. So unless it has like carpet and you want to change the flooring to like laminate or something like that, that's a simpler process. But at least it's not because the floors are just you're stepping on it and it's holes and cracks in it, nothing like that. Just simple things as in terms of look and appeal. You should not run into any major issues. All right, now for sellers. So with sellers, these flippers give you the opportunity to sell a property in a home that is distressed and just down on its last leg. You have the opportunity to sell it as is, because there are flippers and investors who are willing to purchase it and fix it up. Again, it's just, there's different types of people out there, different type of buyers, so a home like that is not going to appeal to buyers who are like looking for a move-in ready home. But if it's somebody who's looking for a fixer-upper project and they want to live in it, or a full-on flipper who is just going to fix it up and resell it, those are the people that would find interest in a property that's not all together, or an older property, so properties like that. So also it's an opportunity for sellers to avoid, you get to avoid some of the costly renovations. So for people who are looking to flip it, flippers who are looking to flip it, or people who are looking for fixer uppers, they're less likely to try to get you to negotiate on things to fix before selling it, because they already have plans to do that. So that's something sellers can keep in mind. Also with investors, sometimes, most of the time, well, I won't say most of the time, but sometimes, it's usually a quicker closing, a quicker process. They can get it done within 30 days or so. Now, I will say yes, it can be a quicker process, but it could take longer to find them at first, you know, in the beginning. When it comes to these distressed properties, it just depends on the area and how many, you know, investors are really, you know, checking the market and looking to, you know, look for and find these distressed properties and properties that are being sold as is. You know, most of the time it's people who are, you know, buying and looking for move-in ready homes. So if you know, don't have that type of property out on the market, you have a more distressed property, then, you know, it may take a little bit longer for the right buyers to come along, you know, in terms of investors. So it may take a little longer for them to come your way, but once they do come your way, sometimes it is a faster process. They may be willing to waive certain contingencies like the home inspections and the appraisals and, you know, things like that. So typically, sometimes it's a faster process because they do waive contingencies like that sometimes. And last but not least, if I have any agents watching, I want to talk to you guys as well on how, you know, flippers, how that works in your point of view and in your interests and all of that. So it is a double opportunity, you know, when you're working with investors and flippers, because they are in the process of, you know, buying them. They're going to buy these properties, they're going to fix them up, and, you know, they're going to sell it out, right? So there's a double opportunity. You can be there for their buying and their selling process. It's also typically a faster process when you're working for investors, and it offers a higher transaction volume because it's typically happening, you know, faster than it would be for your typical buyer. You know, if you have a typical buyer who is buying a home to, you know, actually live in, then, you know, it's going to be a longer process. It's going to be a while. It's going to be a couple of years before most of them move again, you know, if they move again at all, you know, unless it's their forever home. Most of them do move again, but, you know, it will take a while most of the time. So when you're working with investors, it's usually a faster process of them buying and selling, because once the renovations are done, they're going to be ready to put it out on the market, you know, unless it's a time where, you know, they feel like they should hold off for a bigger profit. But, you know, even with that, then again, you know, if you have other investors in, you know, other areas, it can be a faster, higher volume for you to get, you know, consistent transactions and, you know, under your belt. So yeah, because it's you know, it's a quick fix and flip process. So keep that in mind, you know. And so the more that you do, the more credibility you have, you know, so the more information and knowledge and trustworthiness you will have, because you're working with investors, and so they're going to trust you to know the market and how it fits into their ROI, their return on investments, and, you know, also, you know, just seeing how many transactions you have overall, you know, or if you've worked, you know, rather you work with one investor who's, you know, doing a lot of different, you know, they got a lot of different flipping opportunities going on at once, or you have, you know, more than one, and you're, you know, overall it's going to show, you know, how active you are and how often you're doing it, especially if you're showing it all on social media and, you know, just showing your knowledge, showing how you're helping, showing, you know, how many times or how soon these buying and selling processes are done overall. It's going to help you out on how you look to other investors, and then, you know, it's going to attract more clients for you. So that's an opportunity to look at as well. So that's all I have for you guys. I hope this video was beneficial to learn about flippers and just the whole flipping process of fixing properties up and all of those good things. I hope it benefited you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.